All right, I think we're ready to go. We have a really serious topic that I'm really passionate about and that I have been spending hours a week studying and digging into. So I think you guys are going to be you're going to be blessed because of that. But at the same time, just like when you hear anybody's passion about something, there's probably going to be a lot of content. So I'm sorry about that. I'm going to do my best to try to streamline it for your guys' sake. But let's pray and ask the Lord to give us the right heart as we approach this very sensitive topic. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for the opportunity to look at this very deep and important topic of abortion. Lord, I do just pray you would help us, Lord, to have your heart for the women that are involved, the men that are involved, for the doctors involved. But Lord, I pray most of all, Lord, that we would have a heart for the unborn. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. So before we start, one of the things I want to say to look at to set the tone is talking about who gets abortions. Usually every year I have a woman come in who's had an abortion of somebody we know to really show that it's really common, but doesn't mean that the common makes it appropriate, but that it's common so that we're sensitive to people that have abortions. So I think this is one of the most important topics, to have a sensitivity and a love for all that are involved, because it's a very traumatic situation that takes place. So who gets abortions? Well, 30% of women by age 45 will have an abortion. Then that's at the 2008 abortion rates. 1 in 10 women will have an abortion by age 20, and 1 in 4 by age 30, and 3 in 10 by age 45. Okay, so 30% of women. Now, here is one that really surprised me. More than 7 in 10 women obtaining an abortion report a religious affiliation. 70% of women are religious who have abortions. 37 being Protestant, 28 being Catholic, and 7 other. And 25% religious services at least, attend religious services at least once a month. What is that telling us? That a big chunk of the people that are having abortions are Christians. So it's not them out there, it's us in here. Okay, so it's important to start here in the Church of God. I think one of the things that we can say is that would never happen to me, you know. Like, I'm never going to get myself in that situation, or I would never ever consider abortion. But one of the things that's very clear in the Bible is that we need to be careful thinking that could never be us. And then secondly, if you're in that situation, that God gives a way of escape. No temptation has overtaken you except as such as common to man, but God is faithful, who will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you're able, but with the temptation will also make the way of escape, that you may be able to bear it. And then if you've been through that, the Bible says if we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. When I was preparing today, I was looking through my old slides, and Corey Peterson, who has given me so much courage with her testimony, and her passion has rubbed off on me, and she's really been an inspiration to me. I was watching her video from, I think, 3 years ago when she recorded it for us, and I just couldn't help but put it back in the slides because I thought what she said was really powerful. So this is a 2-minute video from Corey from a couple of years ago.
Regarding abortion, I know that's your topic tonight, and this is one that's so dear to my heart because many of you know I had an abortion and the Lord has healed me. But I just wanted to point out a couple of things. I'm hoping that, I know Ryan's going to cover so much, and if you have a guest speaker, many things will be covered, so I don't want to be repetitive. But I do want to say, just as a reminder, 2 out of every 5 women will have an abortion in their lifetime, and half of those will have another. And most women suffer post-traumatic stress disorder as a result of their abortions. This is the same type of thing that veterans from war come back and are dealing with. But they are told by Planned Parenthood and the abortion lobby that there's something wrong with you if you are traumatized by this because it's not that big of a deal. But it is a big deal, and we know it's a big deal because it's the taking of human life. And so I just wanted to encourage you guys, when you think about 2 out of every 5 women, 4 out of every 10 women have had an abortion, just to, even when we stand solidly pro-life, to always be compassionate to those women. A lot of them have not healed or don't even know that they can heal from the trauma of their abortion, and most of them have never told a single soul that they've had an abortion. And so I just wanted to encourage you all to be super compassionate. And if you ever come across or know of anyone who's had an abortion, just know how to love them and know how to get them help. A lot of pregnancy care centers, there's one in Ramona, what's it called? Ramona Pregnancy Center. And there's another one, El Centro, called Real Hope Center. They both provide wonderful abortion recovery. Silent Voices in Chula Vista is the one I went through. Fantastic abortion recovery. I'm happy to help you with this. Ryan is happy to help you with this. If you experience it yourself or if you know someone. So please reach out for help. And then if you know someone who's considering an abortion, to just encourage them to go to these centers because they will provide everything they need for the moms and for these babies. So that's really like all I really have time to share with you. I'm already going a little bit long, and I apologize. I love you all very much, and I miss you.
All right. So one of the things that I think is really important is that if someone has chosen to have an abortion, if it's you or someone that's really close to you, you need to understand you need forgiveness. But you can't be forgiven of something that you don't think you're guilty of, right? Scott Klusendorf in his book, The Case for Life, said, if you've had an abortion, you don't need an excuse. You need an exchange. His righteousness for your sinfulness. The solution to your guilt is not denial, it's forgiveness. You feel guilty because you are guilty. And I do no favors trying to lessen what women have gone through by saying that it's not murder or by excusing it, because they know deep and down in their hearts that it was wrong. What they need is forgiveness and the hope that's found in Jesus Christ. And that's something that we can have in Christ. He can heal even the deepest wounds. One thing that John Newton, an amazing story, if you can look it up, he was the author of the song Amazing Grace, and he was a horrible slave trader before he found Christ. And he says, 2 things I know. I'm a great sinner, and Christ is a great Savior. He was convinced that he was a horrible, horrible sinner, but that Jesus was so much greater than that, and that he forgave all that he had done. When we talk about this, we need to be gentle, because we're talking about the worst violence that's ever been experienced by mankind. We're speaking of post-war violence, and PTSD hides behind every veiled face of a woman who hasn't told you she's had an abortion. We must be gentle with this as we navigate this topic. I'm doing these videos called Speak Life once a week to speak up for the unborn that I encourage you guys to watch, and I'm going to make my own channel soon so you can subscribe to it. But one of the ones I did was, they are not your enemy. In Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12, it says, for we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against the spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. And in 2 Corinthians 10, 3 through 5, we are human, but we do not wage war as humans do. We use God's mighty weapons, not worldly weapons, to knock down the strongholds of human reasoning and to destroy false arguments. We destroy every proud obstacle that keeps people from knowing God. We capture their rebellious thoughts and teach them to obey Christ. And in John 10:10, it says, the thief does not come except to steal and to kill and to destroy. I have come that they may have life and they may have it more abundantly. Listen, when you're talking to somebody who's pro-choice, when you're talking to somebody who's had an abortion, when you're talking to somebody who's standing on the street corner fighting for women's rights to have abortions, don't see them as your enemy and start attacking the person. Understand they are under the influence of Satan's bad thinking. And most women that have abortions have been coerced and forced into those situations. So don't see them as your enemy. Don't see the doctors even that are performing these abortions as the enemy. See them as captives, right? This is a rescue mission, not a war, okay? This is a rescue mission. So don't see those people as your enemy. All right, let's lay down different cases. So I'm hoping that you guys will write this stuff down, commit it to memory, and then use it to have dialogue with people. Because the way I think our country is going to change is through one-on-one conversations with people about this topic, okay? Number one, let's lay down the most important one, the biblical case for pro-life as Christians, okay? God personally relates to the unborn, okay? God personally relates to the unborn. Job 31:15 says, "Did not he who made me in the womb make them? Did not the same one fashion us in the womb?" So God is already calling people in the womb a person, isn't he? So God's doing that. Psalm 139:13-14, "For you formed my inward parts. You covered me in my mother's womb. I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows very well." Jeremiah 1:5, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I sanctified you. I ordained you as a prophet to the nations." So God identifies you as a human. You know, when did you become a human? Think about that for a second. Like, when did you become you? It was at conception, right? You don't think of, oh yeah, when I was born. The moment I was born is when I became a human. No, you became a human in your mother's womb, okay? God relates to you that way too. In Exodus chapter 21, verse 22, it talks about if two men get in a fight and they hit a pregnant woman and the woman's baby ends up dying, that the man's life would be taken. Why? Because it was killing a human life, right? And so God relates to the unborn in that way, and he sees the equality with the unborn. So that's the biblical case. There's a very strong case that God sees the unborn as human, okay? Now, this has helped me a lot. Okay, this is something that I put together just in my reading and studying, okay? There are three forms of pro-choice. So when you talk to somebody, they might have all three positions, one of the positions, maybe two of the positions. What lately, because as I've gotten very vocal and I've been talking to a lot more people about this, is I've found that people don't really believe any of them. They just jump around and repeat things they heard, and so they just hope they can throw you off and finally go, oh yeah, I concede to that point, okay? But here's the three kind of positions that people find themselves to be in. Number one is they see the baby as not human in the womb. It's not a human, it's just cells, just a clump of tissue. Like even when Planned Parenthood talks about the abortions, they talk about, what is the term they use? Tissue matter, you know. Well, the tissue matter will be ejected from your body and pass within a couple days. They don't even say fetus or anything like that, okay? Number two, justified abortion. Like there's situations they're okay to have an abortion, okay? I believe it's killing, but in this situation, this killing is okay, all right? And the third point is the one that I find that a lot of the kids that I talk to are in, is a modified pro-choice, or what I would call a cowardice pro-life. Meaning they say, I'm personally pro-life, but I wouldn't want to force my pro-life positions on other people, okay? It's the whole relativism thing, once again, working its way in, okay? So the most important one that we need to start with is the not human. In most cases, those favoring abortion agree that human persons are valuable. They disagree, though, on whether the unborn child is in fact an example of a human person. Greg Kokel and Alan Shulman are a part of Stand to Reason, and this is something that Greg Kokel put together. But in Alan Shulman's video, he said this: you can answer the question, can I kill it? You can't answer the question, can I kill this, until you answer the question, what is it? If the unborn is not a human being, then no justification for abortion is necessary. However, if the unborn is a human being, then no justification for abortion is adequate, right? Like if my son Cass from the other room is like, Dad, I'm like, yeah, can I kill this? Like, go ahead, son, kill it, you know? Now, if it's a bug or something, maybe it's okay, right? But if it's a sister, right, not okay, right? So can I kill this is depending on what it is, if it's all right, if it's morally justified. So if the baby or the fetus in the womb is not a human, then you don't have to give any justification for doing it. There's nothing wrong for having an abortion, right? But if it is a human, then what justification could you ever give for an abortion, right? Now, let's start with this. Now we're going to start giving the arguments. Let's first talk about, when does someone have human value? What's interesting is, as I looked at my notes from previous years, I was like, there's a couple of professors in Berkeley who even believe that you can kill a baby up to 2 years old and that it's okay, it's justified, because they don't identify as people yet, so they're not humans yet, so you can kill a 2-year-old, okay? Now, what's interesting is the Democratic Party has now associated themselves with infanticide, where they have been the Republican Party has been trying to pass bills to make it so that when a baby is born alive after an abortion, that the doctor there has to administer life to that life-saving medical attention, right? So the baby's born, got to save it. It's now been born. Well, now the Democratic Party has now been lobbying to protect the doctors and allow them to let the baby die. And I've heard stories of nurses where babies are crying for 6 hours as they die on tables inside abortion clinics. Okay, that's the way our country's moving now on that side. So, but when does a person have human value? So arguments against the whole thing. So the first question is abortion inhumane? These videos are going to be a little intense. Later I'll be showing some actual pictures. But right now these are just like artistic renderings. So this first video is videos of people on the street who are pro-choice, and then they learn what they do in an abortion, and they realize that the procedure is completely inhumane. So watch these people's minds change as they watch these.
Would you consider yourself pro-life, pro-choice, or neither?
Pro-choice.
Would you restrict it at any point?
No.
No. So all the way up until
All the way
birth.
up. It's rough.
Do you think now, watching this and from what you just said, do you still
changes.
support abortions up to birth?
No. I don't think I support it here.
I think the person should have a choice to have an abortion or not. Wow, it's brutal.
Does it change your mind at all?
It really did. Yeah. So, abortion shouldn't be legal.
It's your life, so it's your choice. And you believe that that you don't want to have the baby, then it's your choice. So I'm pro-choice, I guess. I didn't realize that the baby was, doing that kind of stuff at such an early state.
Does this change your mind at all about abortion?
Yeah, I believe that's like murder right there. What I saw.
My opinion is that it should be part of the woman's right to choose whether or not to abort her baby.
One word, your thoughts on what you just saw.
Inhumane or heinous, yeah. It does change my mind. Like, a lot of people just say, oh, abortion's okay, or it should be okay, but then I feel like a lot of us we're not really aware of what's the process of it and what's actually happening.
Would you consider yourself pro-life, pro-choice, or neither?
I would say pro-choice, definitely. I would consider myself. That was questionable. I didn't really realize. Yeah, that's how. A little more iffy for me. I don't know either way at the time. Okay. But definitely more controversial than my initial opinions.
If the woman don't have the ability to be responsible for the child, it's maybe the best choice for her to do the abortion.
Kind of agree with her. I think it's people's freedom to choose whether they should have the children. I think it's so unhuman, and it's changed my mind about abortion.
Yeah, I changed my mind completely.
And what are your thoughts about abortion?
I'm definitely all for it if it's choice. That changes my views.
If I was pregnant, I would have to get an abortion. I don't know if it's changed my mind, but maybe it has. Because I don't think I would perform an abortion, honestly, watching these videos.
Do you support aborting the child if it was in a case of incest.
Yeah. I don't care what you're going through. Even if it's incest, don't abort the baby.
In the times that we live in, we gotta understand sometimes people have difficulty being able to raise children. I guess now my perception's changed a little bit. I sort of had this idea that first trimester everything's just kind of getting there, and second trimester baby's formed, but to see that a baby had already been formed early on is quite difficult to watch.
Okay, so every year I have not shown the video, okay, that they were watching, but this year we're going to watch the video. Now, I chose not to show the videos from later because second and third trimester, it's really intense what they have to do to have an abortion. Most of the abortions that take place are within the first trimester, and this video is a video of what they do. And this is an actual abortionist doctor who performed over 1,500 abortions, and God got to him, and he changed his mind, and he no longer does them. So he's going to explain it. There's not going to be any images as far as any actual real ones, but he's going to show real tools and things like that, okay?
My name is Dr. Anthony Levatino. I'm a practicing obstetrician-gynecologist, and I've performed over 1,200 abortions. Today I'm going to describe a first trimester surgical abortion called suction DNC, dilatation and curettage. This is the most frequently performed abortion and is used typically from 5 to 13 weeks of pregnancy. After administering anesthesia, the abortionist uses a speculum like this. This is placed inside the vagina and opened using this screw on the side, allowing the abortionist to see the cervix, the entrance to the uterus. The cervix acts as a gate that stays closed for the duration of pregnancy, protecting the baby until it is ready for birth. The abortionist uses a series of metal rods called dilators, like these, which increase in thickness, and inserts them into the cervix to dilate it, gaining access to the inside of the uterus where the baby resides. The baby has a heartbeat, fingers, toes, arms, and legs, but its bones are still weak and fragile. The abortionist takes a suction catheter like this one. This is a 14 French suction catheter. It's clear plastic, about 9 inches long, and it has a hole through the center. It is inserted through the cervix into the uterus. The suction machine is then turned on with a force 10 to 20 times more powerful than your household vacuum cleaner. The baby is rapidly torn apart by the force of the suction and squeezed through this tubing down into the suction machine, followed by the placenta. Though the uterus is mostly emptied at this point, one of the risks of a suction DNC is incomplete abortion, essentially pieces of the baby or placenta left behind. This can lead to infection or bleeding. In an attempt to prevent this, the abortionist uses a curette to scrape a lining of the uterus. A curette is basically a long-handled curved blade. Once the uterus is empty, the speculum is removed and the abortion is complete. The risks of suction DNC include perforation or laceration of the uterus or cervix, potentially damaging intestine, bladder, and nearby blood vessels, hemorrhage, infection, and in rare instances, even death. Future pregnancies are also at a greater risk for loss or premature delivery due to abortion-related trauma and injury to the cervix. As I mentioned at the beginning, I'm Dr. Anthony Levatino, and in the early part of my career as an OBGYN, I performed over 1,200 abortions. One day, after completing one of those abortions, I looked at the remains of a preborn child whose life I had ended, and all I could see was someone's son or daughter. I came to realize that killing a baby at any stage of pregnancy for any reason is wrong. I want you to know today, no matter where you're at or what you've done, you can change. Make a decision today to protect the preborn. Thank you for your time.
So, looking at that, would you guys say that abortion's inhumane? And that's at the early stages, okay? So we're not, I mean, the other videos you guys can go watch too, but that's with, like he said, what was it, 5 to 13 weeks? Is that what he said? 5 to 13 weeks right there. That's really early, okay? So let's start looking at the arguments. The choice argument. Women should have a right to choose, right? Women should have a right to choose. When you think about it, no one has unrestricted freedom to choose. The freedom depends on what kind of choice one has in mind, right? I mean, you're not free to do everything you want to do, right? I mean, you're not just free to drive right now if you don't have a license. Why should someone just have unrestricted ability to choose whatever they want? Greg Kokel said, generally speaking, we're not interested in snooping around bedrooms, arbitrarily restricting freedoms, or passing laws because deep-seated bigotry or devious desire to control private choices. We are concerned because abortion may possibly take the life of an innocent human person simply because she is in the way and can't defend herself. Abdu Murray said in Saving Truth, in a confused quest to elevate ourselves to duties, we've actually have become devils. We've commoditized the most valuable members of our species and consumed them as a kind of burnt offering to self-appeasement, meaning that we want to be able to still live our lives, so we have an abortion so the kids don't get in the way. But the reality is that we should restrict choices if they are immoral, shouldn't we? You can't just say a woman has a right to choose, right? And we'll be looking a little bit more about, because that will continue on, a woman should choose to be able to do what she wants with her own body, which we'll look at how to respond to that part. But a woman shouldn't just be able to choose whatever she wants to do. That's what the law is here for, to make sure that people don't choose to do things that are immoral, right? Let's look at the judicial case. This is for California. Many will denounce using the word murder to describe abortion, but we're not extreme in using this word. In California, against the person, Crimes Against the Person, Section 187, murder is defined this way. Murder is the unlawful killing of a human being or fetus with malice aforethought. After the definition, we find among the exceptions. This section shall not apply to any person who commits an act which results in the death of a fetus if the acts were solicited, aided, embedded, or consented to by the mother of the fetus. You guys get that? It's murder to kill a fetus. So like if a boyfriend kills his girlfriend and the mother is pregnant with a baby and the baby dies, then he's charged with double homicide. But if the mother wants to go to an abortion clinic at the same time, and because of her choice, changes the morality of it. You see how that works? That's how our law system is set up. The only difference between legal abortion and punishable homicide is the consent of the mother. And that we look back to it, and it just goes to that. Society says, just because something's lawful doesn't make it moral, does it? Now let's look at the scientific case. So this is the conversation you can have with somebody. First, you got to show that the unborn is alive, right? Which to me seems pretty simple, and one of the ways you can do that is through an ultrasound, okay? And that's why it's good to support those ministries that do ultrasounds. No period of non-life exists for the fetus, right? From conception, from the zygote, right? It's life, right? There's no point of non-life there, okay? The unborn is growing, isn't it? Right? It's growing. That shows that it's alive. The unborn meets the scientific criteria for life. It grows, it responds to stimuli, and it metabolizes nutrients and converts it to energy, right? Those all show that it's alive. Now, most pro-choice people will say, yeah, of course it's alive, but it doesn't mean that it's human. But we'll get to that in a second. The next thing that we need to do is show that the unborn is separate from the mother. Now, this answers the question, it's my body, it's my choice, right? Now, if the baby is not her body, then is it her choice? Not really, right? Because it's not her body. It's in her body. It will affect her body, right? But it's not her body, okay? The unborn can have a different blood type. It has a different heart, and it has a different circulatory system, right? The unborn could be a different gender. That proves right away that the unborn is not the mother's body, right? They have different DNA, right? Completely different DNA. They have different fingerprints. And you could go on, different lungs, different looks, everything. There's so many things that just so biologically, through science, they're different. The unborn is separate from the mother. It's not the mother's body. Well, the next question is, if we first show that the unborn is alive, and then we show that the unborn is separate individual from the mother, Next, we got to show that the individual is human in biology. Now, number one, its DNA is human, right? So if you find blood out on the sidewalk and there's a lot of it, and you call the cops, you're like, I don't know what happened, and they test it, their first thing they're going to look to see is what kind of blood is it? Was it deer blood? Was it pig's blood? Was it human blood? And they can find out very quickly, based on DNA, that it's human, right? In the same way, we can show that the baby is human. It's not something other than a human. And also the law of biogenesis. Now, species produce the same species. The law of biogenesis, attributed to Louis Pasteur, is the observation that living things come only from other living things by reproduction. That is, life does not arise from non-living material, which was the position held by spontaneous generation. So, humans come from what? Humans, right? So we know that the baby's human if the parents are human, okay? So it shows that the baby is, so we've shown that the baby is alive, that the baby is separate from the mother, and that the baby is human. Okay? And now we'll get into, is all human life the same, okay? But first I want to talk about something interesting, developed versus constructed. This is something that I think really takes away the confusion that takes place. According to the 2005 New York Times op-ed piece cited by Richard Smith, most Americans see the fetus exactly the same way, as something constructed part by part. So would you say a tire is a truck? No. Would you say that the body of a car is the car? No. Like what stage of the car does it become a car? Yeah, so all of us would come with different things. Like you can call it a car without a hood or a windshield or without a seat or whatever, right? And all cars have different stages of development or construction, right? But human life is different, right? Because there's a different inherent value. Because what people will look at, the pictures that I'm about to show, and they're like, that doesn't look human. That looks like an alien. And because it looks alien to us, we think that it's not human. But what part does it not be human become human? So we need to not see it as something that's constructed, but something that is developed. So now let's lay down the question, is all human life valuable? This is called the philosophical case. When does the fetus become a human in the womb? And this is a great question to ask somebody if you've built enough love and kindness. Like, this is not your first question, but you can ask somebody, finish this sentence for me. It's okay to kill a baby when? Right? Like, at what stage? That's what they can ask, okay? So, week 6, they have a brain development. The brain is there by week 6, okay? Death is considered the loss of brain activity, right? So some people will say it should be the same for birth. But there's a difference. When you lose your brain activity, most of the time you're not going to gain it back, right? But with birth, you're going to gain more development and more brain activity, okay? So in just a couple weeks, that fetus that doesn't have brain activity will have brain activity. So that's not a good argument, week 6. Week 12, sentence, is when the baby can feel pain, right? There's people who can't feel pain, right? Like my kids, they don't feel pain the same way other kids feel. They have a real strong pain tolerance. You know, there's people that are paralyzed. You know, we're not like, oh, you can't feel this, so we can kill you now, right? That doesn't make sense. Just because you can't feel pain doesn't mean that you're not human, okay? But I think why people are okay with abortion before 12 weeks, when the baby can't feel the pain, is because then they feel less bad, because they're like, well, at least it died peacefully, right? But it's still killing the human life. Quickening is 16 weeks, the first time the mother feels the baby. You can't say that a baby becomes valuable when the mother recognizes her, because have you ever seen those shows on that horrible channel, TLC, where people literally have babies, like, in the bathroom because they didn't know they were pregnant, which I don't know how is possible, but it happens, right? So then that way you would say 40 weeks is when a baby becomes human, because some moms don't feel the baby till then, right? So that's such a relative statement. This is a major one, the next one, viability. When the baby's able to survive outside the womb, right? And a lot of people believe that, but not all babies are the same, right? And this is actually a baby that was born at 23 weeks and survived, okay? Lots of babies are born at 23 weeks and survive. Was anybody a preemie baby that's in this room? Anybody? Were you?
Yeah, I came
2 weeks early. Were you a preemie? Yeah, one of my good friends, Joey, he was born way early. I forgot. I think it was 30 weeks, right? So you can be born really early and survive, right? So that's not a good rationale. The next question is, are all human beings valuable? The real question today is not when human life begins, but what is the value of human life, is what Ronald Reagan said. Scott Klusendorf, in his book, The Case for Life, said, are you and I valuable for what we are intrinsically, or only valuable for what we can do functionally? Alan Shulman said this, abortion turns out to be a form of discrimination. We have a history on our planet of taking a class of human beings and disqualifying them from personhood in order to engage in some type of discrimination. We had discrimination against African Americans because of the color of their skin. We had discrimination of the Jews because of their race. And now we have discrimination against the unborn. Abraham Lincoln said this, I should like to know if taking this old Declaration of Independence, which declares that all men are equal upon principle, and making exceptions to where it will stop. If one man says it does not mean a Negro, why not say that it does not mean some other man? Oh man, Abraham Lincoln has like some of the best quotes that you could use for pro-life, because he says, if you say that, oh well, if I can force my will upon another man, then that makes him less human. Then he says, you better watch out, because it's just another day before a man can force his will on you, right? Because once you take that stance, then you have to apply it to yourself, right? Malcolm Muggeridge said, either life is always and in all circumstances sacred, or intrinsically of no account. It is inconceivable that it should be in some cases the one and not in the other. This next one is taken from Stephen Schwartz's SLED, and this is a great way to be able to remember in a discussion, so I'd encourage you to commit this to memory. The first one is size, okay? Size. Is someone less valuable because they're smaller? Right? Some of you guys in this room are smaller, so you're like, heck no, right? And some people think that. Just because you have a tiny baby doesn't mean it's less human, right? And you would never say that about somebody who was of short stature or had been born with issues with growing. Level of development. Is someone less valuable because they are less developed, right? They're not as smart or not as athletic or not as capable or not as further along. No. Just because you didn't develop well, right? We all have our elements where we didn't develop well, right? And so we can't say that. Environment. Are you less human dependent on location? Are you less human depending on location? I want to get to this next slide real fast. Hold on. I messed up. I should have done my slides different. So that's me, right? That's Addie in my arms, right? And if the doctor came into my room and ripped my child from my arms and killed my baby right there, it would be homicide, wouldn't it? But a couple hours before this, in the state of New York now, they could have done it inside my wife's womb, and it would have been legal. Abortion is legal all the way up to the point of birth now, okay, in the state of New York. What's the difference? There is no difference. We all know there's no difference. If you're living in Africa, does that make you less valuable than if you're living in the United States? Environment doesn't make you less valuable as a human. Degree of dependency. Well, some people will be like, well, it's dependent on the mother, and if it's not really a human because if it wasn't in the mother's womb, it would die anyway. How many of you guys would have died at 3 years old if you didn't have your parents, right? Just because you're dependent on somebody doesn't mean you're less valuable. And what about your grandparents who have to rely upon people to feed them and take care of them, right? Ronald Reagan said, "We can't diminish the value of one category of human life, the unborn, without diminishing the value of all human life." Abdu Murray said, we return to Peter Singer's rhetorical question, why should we believe that the mere fact that the being is a member of the species of Homo sapiens endows its life with some unique, almost infinite value? If something's value is determined by the price paid for it, then God's answer to Singer's question is the cross, where an infinite price was paid for each one of us. As Christians, if you want to know if human life is valuable, think about what Jesus did on the cross for each one of you. That's how we know he's valuable. Now, people will say this, it's so hard, Ryan, to know when life begins. And I agree with that. Like, as much as I become pro-life, there's a real challenge, like, within those first couple days, like, is that where life begins? But I love this book, and I would encourage you guys to read it. It's called Abortion and Conscience of the Nation by Ronald Reagan. And he says this, anyone who doesn't feel sure whether we are talking about a second human life should clearly give the benefit of the doubt. If you don't know whether a body is alive or dead, you would never bury it. Right? If you find a body, I think it's dead. Let's bury it. No, right? You make sure that it's not alive. In the same way, if you're not sure if the baby in the womb is human, then let's err on the side of caution, right? So there is the argument for the human life, right? So we looked at the scientific case, the biblical case. We looked at the philosophical case, right? Now let's look at the second type of view for abortion is two wrongs make a right, right? Bringing these children into the world would be an economic strain. Now, there is a term called trot out the toddler. It was created by Scott Klusendorf. That's this tactic that we can use. If we've confirmed that the unborn has human value in a person, then can we apply the same logic to a 2-year-old? Would it be justified to kill a 2-year-old when they became an economic drain? Like, instead of having foster care, why don't we have, when a mom can no longer take care of her 5 children, that we just take them to a doctor who will just put them to sleep and they'll just die peacefully? Why don't we just do that? Why would we never do that? Because we believe that human life is valuable, don't we? We believe it has dignity. So if you wouldn't do it for a 2-year-old, would you do it? Why would you do it for the unborn? So in the same way, why would we use economic reasons for that? When humans become expensive, can we kill them? Ronald Reagan said, as a nation, we must choose between the sanctity of life ethic and the quality of life ethic. Sometimes it's going to be harder to choose to keep your baby, but it's the better ethic. When making decisions about right and wrong, we ask what is good, not what is easy. We ask what is virtuous, not what is convenient. Peter Kreeft said in the unaborted Socrates, it's better to suffer evil than to inflict it. It's better for you to go through the economic strain and to be a single mother or to go through all that pain, be living on the streets, than for you to kill a child. We think that as Christians, we believe that's the greater good. Now, we also believe as believers, if we're in the place to be able to help those women, we should do that, right? We should not only have the answer, we should be the answer, right? Women should not be forced to bring unwanted children into the world. Then the question is, when people become unwanted, may we kill them? The fact that a child is unwanted is more commentary on the parents than the child. And if the fetus is a person, whether it's wanted or not, is irrelevant to life. I love what Ronald Reagan said once again. A child need not be perfect to have a wonderful life. Right? Okay. Women should not be forced to carry a baby resulting from rape. Here's the thing. This one, you need to make sure you answer with heart before you answer to the mind. I liked what, once again, Alan Sliman said. He said, often when the issue of rape is brought up, it's not to see if you have a logical response, it's to see if you have a heart, and unfortunately we fail that test. So first, when you answer somebody, you say, I can't even imagine what you're going through. Can we talk about that? Don't even answer them about the other part. Just love those women, because that's a devastating thing. I found this really powerful video about this woman, and she says, this is the title of the video, she says, let's see if I can find it. My son is a million things that have nothing to do with my rape. Watch this video as she gives her testimony.
What was my life like before the assault? I think that things were pretty much status quo. You would consider us an average family. We had 4 kids and felt like I was kind of at the top of my game as an interpreter. I was taking on more work and traveling. I had interpreted a few cruises, which was really cool, I thought. In January of 2014, I took a two-week assignment out of town. And the last day that I was there, I finished up my job and I went back to the hotel, and it was snowy. I made it to my room and opened the door and dropped all my stuff inside and turned around to close the door, and there was a man in the doorway. He hit me in the head, a closed fist, and things went kind of fuzzy, and he dragged me back into the room and he raped me. I broke a couple of ribs and some fingers trying to fight until I recognized that fighting was making it worse, and disappeared somewhere inside myself. I woke up hearing someone scream. I was in a stairwell outside of the hotel. I was wearing a broken bra, and that's it. And it was below freezing temperatures, which actually probably saved my life because I had a brain bleed. Life after the assault was very challenging. I did not bounce back quickly. I was not able to resume normal life the way it had been. 5 weeks after the rape, I was scheduled to interpret on a cruise. Day 2, I'm sick, dysentery. I wasn't getting better. The one head doctor, she said, "Was there a chance you could be pregnant?" And I just say, "Okay, look, this is probably not, I'm almost sure I'm not, but I was raped, last month, and you should probably just go ahead and test me." She gives me the pregnancy test, and there was a second line, and I just stare at it. We made a stop in Cartagena, Colombia, and I was taken to this, looked like a little garage, this little hospital, and I had a translator with me, who I did not need, because as soon as they put that ultrasound in, there was a little pea, and I've seen those little peas before, and that little pea was my son. And I smiled at him. I feel like the world would be telling me, "You're pregnant from something horrible. You should be angry and disgusted." And I felt this rush of fierce protectiveness over this baby. And I remember just putting my hands on my stomach and saying, like, I have to tell my husband. I have to tell my husband. And I said, I'm pregnant. And there was just a hair of a pause, just a split second. And he said, "Okay." I said, "Okay." What do you mean, okay? How is this okay? Like, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, my parents are going to freak. What are your parents going to say? What do we tell the kids? Like, my mind is going just all over the place. I'm like, how are you calm? And he said, "Honey, this is something beautiful." He said, "This is a gift." He said, "This is something wonderful that's come out of something so painful for us. We love babies." And I said, "Yeah, we love babies." And he said, "This is going to be awesome." I said, "Okay." He said, "We can do this. We can do this, Jay. We can do this." I said, "Yeah, we can do this." My story is not one about choice. I'm not telling my story to say, look, this is the choice that I made. I'm talking to emphasize the humanity of my son. He's a reminder that God is still on the throne and that good still wins out over evil. In the grand scheme of things, when you look back and you think of the things that you'd like to take out of your life, I couldn't ever take back what happened to me because it would mean not having him. And he's worth it.
So, I feel like she just perfectly, through her story, answers the question, doesn't she? Right? 85% of rape victims who become pregnant choose to carry the baby to term anyway. And here's some things also. Statistically, they'll say that we're talking about, this is the pro-choice, they'll say that there's, upward of, what was it? I can't remember now. Over 5,000, something like that, pregnancies related to rape every year. And you know that there's over 800,000 abortions that take place every year, that 1 in 4 babies are aborted in our country. So even if we allowed abortion just for rape, which I'm not saying we should, it would eliminate a major portion of the abortions, okay? Let's see. Okay. I didn't put this one in my slides, but making abortion illegal forces women into back alleys with coat hangers. More women will die without safe abortions. I want you to know there's no such thing as a safe abortion. Why? Because someone always dies, right? So someone will always die. But Greg Kokel said, should the law be faulted for making it more risky for anyone to kill another innocent person? The fact that bank robbery is dangerous to the felon doesn't seem to be a good reason to make grand larceny legal, okay? So, all right, now let's look at I'm personally against abortion, but I don't believe in forcing my views on others. Greg Kokel said, let me see if I understand you. I said, you are convinced that abortion kills an innocent child, yet you think the law should allow women to do that to their own babies. Did I get that right? Because that's what this view is. I'm personally against it. I believe it's murder, but I believe that other women should be able to murder their babies, is what you're saying in this situation. The logic of the modified pro-choice position reduces to, I think it's wrong to kill my own children, but I don't think we should stop other people from killing their babies. Another common objection is this: if you don't like abortion, then don't have one. Saying if you don't like an abortion, don't have one to those opposed to abortion is similar to telling the abolitionists not to own slaves if they don't like slavery, right? We think it's morally wrong, okay? So that's why we're standing up. Here's something I got to talk about. I keep telling people, you got to go watch this movie Unplanned. It's in theaters right now. I think every single girl should see it, even if it's hard for you to go watch. Why? Because when I watched that movie, it took me from being pro-life in conviction, or pro-life in sentiment, to pro-life in conviction. What do I mean by that? Meaning in sentiment, yeah, I believe I'm pro-life. I vote pro-life. Okay, that's the only thing and then teaching this message once a year. Pro-life in conviction is that I actually believe that I need to stop and do something. 2,500 babies are aborted every single day. If there are 2,500 kindergartners killed on playgrounds every day in our country with guns, how would we respond? How would you respond individually? I'm not saying the country, not asking your parents, but you. How would you respond to the 2,500 kindergartners killed every single day in our country? Would you be horrified? What would you do practically? Is my question. And for me, that's what really stuck out to me as I watched this movie, because it moved me emotionally. Because I was pro-life here, but it moved it from here to here. And so that's what I'm hoping to do for you guys tonight and to start. But I would really, really encourage your parents to take you and go see this movie and have a conversation with them. Not taking a stand is taking a stand, isn't it? Not taking a stand is taking a stand. Regarding Roe versus Wade, imagine you're back in the 19th century and the court is confronted with the issue of enslaving African Americans. Suppose in the name of state neutering that it delivers the opinion that it takes no stand on the issue. On that basis, it allows white Americans to own blacks as property. The court may verbally deny taking any position on the issue, but its allowance of slavery is actually morally equivalent to taking a side, that African Americans are not human persons. Likewise, the court's verbal denial of taking a position on fetal personhood is contradicted by its conclusion that abortion is a fundamental constitutional right and that fetuses are not persons under the Constitution. So, by not taking a stand for the court to say, we're not going to say it's right or wrong to own black slaves, what are they doing? What are they doing? They're taking a stand, aren't they? Because they're saying that they're not worth protecting, right? By saying nothing, they are saying something, okay? Greg Kokel said this: we work feverishly to extract a coal miner hidden under a mountain of earth in the hope that his heart will still be beating when we get to him. Why not the infant human heart beating hidden within its mother's womb? Think about that. Like, we would dig and dig and dig and dig to get some coal miners out. Why aren't we trying to protect the unborn in our country? Like seriously. Saying nothing is saying something. I'm reading this book called The Case for Life right now, and it really spoke to me. On page 242, right at the end of the book, it's like the very end of the book, it talks about this story of this young man who, I'm trying to see if I can find it, 242. Let's see, hold on a second. Oh, here it is. His name was Emmett Till, and this is in 1955. He was a 14-year-old black youth from Chicago, and he traveled to visit his cousin in the town of Money, Mississippi. And he was bragging about his white girlfriend he had back in Chicago. So he started flirting with this 20-year-old white married woman behind the counter, and this is 1955, at the birth of the civil rights movement. And the other ones, all his cousins were like, dude, not down here in the South. Don't mess around with that. A few days later at 2 a.m., Emmett was taken at gunpoint from his uncle's home by the clerk's husband and another man and savagely beaten him. And they killed him with a single bullet to the head. Emmett's blood-bloated corpse was found 3 days later in the river. A cotton gin fan had been shoved over his face and tied with barbed wire. His face was partially crushed and beaten almost beyond human recognition. The local sheriff placed Emmett's body in a sealed coffin and shipped it back to his mother in Chicago. So when the mom got the body, people said, let's have a closed casket, but she protested and said, I want an open casket funeral for her son Emmett. She said, I want the whole world to see what they did to my boy. The photo of Emmett's mangled body in the open casket was published in Jet magazine that helped launch the civil rights movement in America. 3 months later in Montgomery, Alabama, Rosa Parks refused to go to the back of the bus when ordered to do so. She said that the image of Emmett Till gave her the courage to stand her ground. She saw the picture of this boy, 14-year-old boy, beaten beyond human recognition, and she couldn't get that image out of her head. And she said, I'm going to take a stand, no matter what it costs me. This is why I want you guys to go see this movie Unplanned, because that's what it does. So, this is what we're going to do tonight. You're welcome. I'm only going to leave it up for a couple seconds, but I'm going to show you human lives that have been taken in the womb, babies that are probably around 13 weeks, okay? And this is their parts, their body parts. And when I was preparing for this, I was crying as I was looking at this. And it's an image I can never get out of my head again. But it gives me the conviction to know this is murder. It's not just theoretical anymore. So I'm going to show the picture. You guys are welcome to close your eyes if you'd like to. But I want to encourage you to look. And this is why I want you encouraged to look. is, do you feel like you want your heart to engage, or you feel like it's okay just to be disengaged? So, it's up to you. I know some people are not ready for that, but I'm going to show you the picture. These are hands and feet that we see of humans who have been aborted. Okay. All right. The picture's not up if you want to look up again. We need to open the casket. Until we do, Americans will continue tolerating an injustice they never have to look at. How many of you guys have ever seen pictures of the Holocaust? What did that do to you? Probably made you weep, made you cry, probably ruined your day. But it made you never want to be anti-Semitic, right? In the same way, that's what I'm hoping this would do. So what can we do? Number one, prayer. Ronald Reagan said, "I believe it will not be possible to accomplish our work, the work of saving lives, without being a soul of prayer." I want you guys to see this movie so bad, like so bad, because the movie gave me so much hope. Because the story is a woman named Abby Johnson. She was complicit in 22,000 abortions as a Planned Parenthood director. And there was this group called 40 Days for Life that stood outside this Planned Parenthood in Bryan, Texas, and prayed. And they do it during Lent for 40 days, and they pray. And through a series of events, she turned to those people in that situation. 40 Days for Life, since their beginning, have seen 99 clinics close. 500 abortion workers come out. And I got to go to El Cajon and pray at a 40 Days for Life. But 200, I think it was 242, somewhere around there, confirmed lives were saved during the 40 Days of Life. They say, Planned Parenthood says, when there's someone standing outside of Planned Parenthood, there's a 70% no-show rate outside for those. What I mean no-show is that the woman sees people praying outside and they just keep going and don't have their abortions. Prayer is what's going to change things. So I hope that tonight that you're convicted to pray every single morning for the unborn. Every single day. I've been starting to pray every single day, every single night. Next, be courageous. You know, maybe what you needed today was not information, but courage. Some people don't lack the message, but they lack the courage to speak the message. Some of us are lights under a basket. We need to be informed on the pro-life message and not be afraid to proclaim it. I hope that you guys see my life and that it inspires you. Corey has been that person for me, and I hope that I can be a part of that for you, okay? We need to stand in the gap, right? It's not acceptable. We need to make abortion unthinkable. Be vulnerable. One of the things is this. There's a difference between being transparent and being vulnerable, isn't there, right? Being transparent is like, here's who I am, and you can take it if you like it or not. Vulnerable is, here is my story. Now you can judge me. Now I'm in this situation, and now I'm not safe anymore. But because I'm not safe, that makes people open up and them to be vulnerable. Like the story I told you guys the other night about when I thought Megan was pregnant while I was on the mission field in Africa. You know, that's a moment that's very vulnerable for me. Like, I don't want to talk about that. But I hope it will help you guys to open up, you know, and to make the right decisions. Help pregnant women. As a rule, women do not make decisions about pregnancy prevention or treatment on the basis of statistical evaluations and medical advice, but rather on the basis of personal attitudes and necessities. There are a lot of pregnancy care centers that can use volunteer help all the time. So when you're using your volunteer hours, go up to Ramona, go up to El Centro, go up to Indio. They're all over the place. And they're places that are pro-life, and they help women. You can help tie baskets or whatever. That could be your way as a high schooler. And when you're out of high schooler, spend your weekends there, you know. Donate to causes. Bring hope. I've read a lot of books about Christian authors about the topic of abortion, but sometimes they miss the thing about bringing hope. And one of the things that I want to remind you is my story. In 1986, I was born to the most wonderful single mother that the world has ever seen. My mom's name is Lynette Lynn. She is fabulous. And here's the short story. my mom went to get a checkup because she was feeling sick. She was in nursing school, becoming a psychiatric nurse, and she wasn't feeling well. And the nurse came in, she says, "You're pregnant. You're pregnant." And my mom's single at this time, and she's like, "We're going to give you a minute to think about what you want to do, and we're going to come back in." And my mom said that she's never heard anything like this before, but while she was in that room at that doctor's office, that she heard an audible voice speak to her that she believes was God. It said, "I want you to keep this baby." And God intervened in my life, okay, at that moment. And she told the nurse what she heard, and the nurse was a Christian. And the nurse gave her the gospel right there and told her about Jesus Christ, and then he died for her sins, and she accepted Jesus into her heart and became a believer right there. And then she found a church later. And when my mom received Christ, it changed her heart, but it didn't change her earthly circumstances. She's still a single mother living in a small house, or about to be a single mother. And she was so scared, and she said, and I have her journal. I was going to read it to you guys tonight, but I'm going super long anyway. But she talks about her fear and how scared she is. And she got a card in the mail. And you can watch my video where I talk about this. And there was $3,000 in it. And it said, "This is from God for you and your baby." And she called the church, and she's like, "Is that from you?" And he's like, "We're a small church. We can't afford to just give people $3,000. And so someone had it on their heart, and God led them, and she was able to provide for me, and she met my dad a year later. But she trusted that God would provide. She said, she just chose to seek God's kingdom first, and then all those things would be added unto her. There's hope. How many of you have a family member that was born to a teen pregnancy or a unwed pregnancy? Anybody? Someone that you just love or know, or you're one of them, right? Yeah, where you've been in that situation where your mom had a baby when she was a teenager, or your aunt or your cousin or whoever else. Do you ever look at that baby that was born and be like, "They shouldn't have done it"? No, you don't, right? You're like, "Man, that woman is so powerful, and it's amazing that they got through it." We need to give women more credit than we give them. Care about all touched by abortion. Our motivation will greatly determine our execution. We can't get so consumed by the cause that we forget to care about the people that the cause was intended to care for. How do you show that you care? You listen. You know what you're talking about, and you be the change. Support pro-life laws and pro-life lawmakers. Martin Luther King said this: "It may be true that the law cannot change the heart, but it can restrain the heartless. It may be true that the law cannot make a man love me, but it can keep him from lynching me." And I think that's pretty important also. I love that. Because people would say, "Martin, you can't change the country unless you change people's hearts." And he's like, "Yeah, but if we can get laws in place, then people can't kill me," right? So in the same way, we need to support good laws, right? Educate yourself. I would encourage you, I put the logo up there, to watch my Speak Life videos. They're going to be out once a week. Make that a part of your week and watch it all the way through, and then think about it and send it to one of your friends. Start sharing my videos. Start sharing other videos. One of the things I did, how many of you guys use social media of any sort, right? What I did is I went and started liking all of the pro-life organizations, good and bad, and started the ones that were too hostile, I deleted. But I would say Live Action is a really good one. Life News is a really good one. Abby Johnson, and then There Were None is another really good one. Save the Storks is another one. You guys can ask me, and I'll show you all the links. You can actually go on my Facebook and see my likes and just like all my same likes. And then your Facebook will become a pro-life feed, and like every other post is a pro-life post, and you'll get super educated like I do. Okay? Speak the truth in love, and love other people. All right? So with that, I got to end with this. I've been encouraging people to go watch this movie, Unplanned. They go and watch it, and they're like, "Wow, that was really powerful. It made me cry." I was so moved by it. And then I say, "Okay, so then what?" And they're like, "What?" I'm like, "So what is God telling you to do?" "What do you mean? What is he telling you to do?" You can't just go watch something like that and just step away. Imagine that you went to a Holocaust museum, but you were living in the country where the Holocaust was still happening. And you said, wow, I was really moved by that. And then just went back to your life, right? You can't do that. And I'm not saying, and I say this in one of my videos, I'm not saying you have to do everything or become what I'm doing, okay? But you can do something, right? You could do something. Start by praying every morning. Do one of these things I put on the list. So I want to see us becoming bold in this area. So thanks so much, guys, for listening to me longer than any other Truth Quest message. But I spend a lot of time reading on this and investing my time and life into this. And it's a very important topic to me. And I hope it becomes a very important topic to you to defend the unborn. And listen to this. You might think I'm just a teenager, but that's where it starts. People listen to youth more than they listen to anybody else. So start speaking up now. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, I pray that we would not just be pro-life in sentiment, but pro-life in conviction. Lord, that we would be practical, that we'd be loving, and that we would choose to make the decision to look into the darkness and be the light. Lord, I pray for the 2,500 babies that are going to be aborted tomorrow. I pray for the mothers that have no hope, that they feel like they have no option, Lord, that you would send your church to those 2,500 mothers and telling them they have hope. Lord, I pray for this generation that they would say enough is enough. Pray we'd stop buying into the evil lie of Satan of relativism. Lord, I pray for women, Lord, maybe even girls in this room who have had abortions and feel so sick and gross because of what they've seen, what they've learned tonight, Lord. I pray that they would know that they are forgiven in you if they ask, that they can find hope in you, and that they can find restoration in you. Lord, I pray that you would break our hearts. And Lord, that you would give us courage to step out and make a difference. In Jesus' name, amen.